In this lecture, we will explain how to write a Product Design Specification, PDS for short. The PDS is a formally written design document that clearly defines the product's purpose, features, and functionality. It documents an agreement amongst the project team for the design goals and aligns the design to the marketing spec. The PDS has provisions for changes to any spec. Typically, this occurs when you realize that it will be prohibitively expensive or time-consuming to meet a certain spec. Then you will want to reduce it in complexity or eliminate it altogether so that you can get the project done. It is a bad idea to avoid writing or maintaining the PDS. In that case, nobody fully understands the goals and details about the project. The detailed product design phase goes into an endless loop, mass confusion reigns, and frustration builds amongst the team members. Then people question why they can never finish the project. Don't go there. Diligently write a well-defined PDS. The PDS contains implicit content in the form of how you write the specs and explicit content in terms of written details in the specs. First, let's go over the implicit content. Defining your specs is a method of convincing your customer to buy the product. We call this our value proposition. We have a place in the PDS template for you to define your product principles. We want you to write these simple statements as a way to avoid adding unnecessary bells and whistles to your design. This way, you stay focused on the essential values of the product. For a microwave, you might write, "It heats food." For a skateboard, you might write, "It gets you places on campus." For a backpack, you could write, "It holds books, food, and water." You should write your specs so that a person skilled in the art, in other words, one who knows the product designs in detail, can understand it. Your PDS will form a central part of your project reports. Therefore, we are looking for your team's writing style to be clear, succinct, and logical. Formally speaking, we want you to write how your design meets the target user's needs. We have a spot for you to define functional requirements, the service environment in terms of operating temperature, humidity, pressure, etc., the size of your product, power requirements, and a bit about packaging. Designing products fully out of recyclable materials is common these days. Here's a few tips for you to consider when writing your PDS. First, understand your audience for the document. It should be written for technically astute people who also have some understanding of the product. Include only what people need to know to design the product. Edit out extraneous information. Create a brief outline of the document first. Our template is set up for you to do this. Make sure to use consistent terminology across all of the specs. Distinguish between must-have and desired but not required. Have all your teammates proofread the PDS before you finalize it and submit it as part of the project report. Please use MS Word for the PDS as well as project reports. Here's some pitfalls to avoid when writing your PDS. Prioritize your requirements in order of importance, or else you won't have time to implement them all in the design. Classify them as priority 1 for essential, in other words, must-have, 2 for nice-to-have, and 3 for low priority. Do not make improper or unfounded assumptions. This usually happens when you don't understand the customer's environment or you have an invalid value proposition. Watch out for incomplete, ambiguous, or overambitious specs. This leads to conflicts in your requirements or mass confusion as to the design task. Lastly, you won't finish the project if you have too many features. That usually occurs when you don't properly prioritize the requirements.